With the release and current support of Battlefield 2042 going over like a lead balloon, the Battlefield fandom has now started looking back somewhat fondly at probably the previously most hated title in the series, Battlefield 5, and wonders, did we really appreciate what we had? With the future of the franchise now more questionable than ever, I wanted to look back at the controversial, flawed, but possibly misunderstood Battlefield 5 and answer the question, is it worth playing in 2022? If you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a like and subscribe if you haven't. It really helps me feed my starving family. Alright, not really, but I do appreciate it. Now, let's put on a weird prosthetic arm and jump into a strange and wacky take on World War II. Before we dive into the gameplay itself, I wanted to quickly revisit why exactly this title received so much hate and vitriol upon its release. It all started with what is arguably one of the worst, most confusing, ill-conceived, and disliked trailers in the entire series. The tone was all over the place, the direction was strange and confusing, and the design elements were jarring. It honestly wasn't even clear if this was an actual World War II title or some other type of steampunk alt-history game.
I'm just trying to figure out if this bridge was damaged from the war or if that's the period. Like, is this an apocalyptic steampunk period? I'm just trying to figure out what the hell is this. World War I, World War II? Is this like a sort of like a futuristic civil war in the United States? Is it Cold War era?
Needless to say, it was not received well, and the following communications from the team were defensive and in some ways insulting. While I agree that the trailer is terrible, I personally think a lot of the controversy around the reveal of Battlefield 5 was overblown in some ways. However, the negative perception of the game prior to its release was essentially locked in for much of the community. As a result, it sold poorly, and stiff competition removed Battlefield as a series from its standing as one of the biggest FPS games in the market. I personally always had fun with Battlefield 5, but was disappointed with its release as well. The content was lacking, it had tons of issues, the maps weren't great, and it lacked the polish and care of Battlefield 1, and the live service model in the months following launch was really underwhelming. Although, as I said in my other Battlefield in 2022 video, compared to 2042, it's looking content-filled at this point. Dozens of patches, time to kill changes, and annoying reversions, and the addition of the incredible War in the Pacific update later. When compared to 2042, Battlefield 5 is actually in a very solid spot as a fun and engaging multiplayer experience, horrific, immersion-breaking elite skins aside. Much like other Battlefields, Battlefield 5 features large-scale battles of both infantry and vehicle gameplay. The four classes of Battlefield 1 return, with Assault focusing on anti-vehicle gadgets, assault rifles, and shotguns, medics who can heal and revive allies and who use submachine guns and bolt-action carbines, the support who supplies ammo, repairs, builds, and lays down suppressive fire with light and medium machine guns, and finally the Scout, who spots, performs reconnaissance, and uses long-range sniper rifles. Given the differences in weapons and gadgets, each class fulfills very different gameplay styles and roles on the battlefield, and is a system I still really enjoy as it allows you to specialize and complement your squad in a variety of ways. Imagine that, a class system designed to enhance teamwork and promote coordination. What will they think of next? Speaking of squads, squad play was in my opinion greatly improved in Battlefield 5, with squads earning points that allowed the squad leader to call in reinforcements, special abilities that can really help turn the tide of a battle, from smokescreens to artillery strikes, unique vehicles, and the massive and terrifying V1 rocket. Squad reinforcements is actually one of my favorite new additions in Battlefield 5. Another great improvement to squad play was squad revives. While medics retain their ability to revive any fallen ally quickly, squad mates of any class could now revive each other, albeit with a longer animation. This really incentivizes sticking by your squad, as it greatly improves your chances of being revived if down, if you have good squad mates at least. Jumping back to the class system, new features were introduced such as revamped and class-specific spotting mechanics, specializations, and soldier customization. While not all perfectly executed, created some engaging gameplay moments and player agency. While eventually some period-accurate and simple cosmetics were added, the vast majority aren't just inaccurate, but in my opinion, absolutely terrible looking.
That's terrible.
Because I'm a filthy casual, I think Battlefield 5 features some fantastic gunplay and movement mechanics. It's not perfect and maybe not my favorite, but there's many times where it feels buttery smooth and satisfying just to move around by vaulting, crouch sprinting, and directional diving your way around the large variety of environments featured in the game. For gunplay, random bullet deviation was removed, as well as many of the suppression effects of previous Battlefields, and while balance is certainly an issue, I still have a lot of fun with it, especially with sniping. I know there are many out there that have done deep dives into the gun mechanics of 5 5 and pointed out its many flaws, but as an average to slightly above average player like myself, it honestly just feels really good most of the time. Attrition was a new addition to this entry and basically means what it says in that you will find yourself lacking supplies, such as healing pouches and ammunition. While the severity of attrition was toned down from the beta, I still enjoy the dynamics it adds to infantry gameplay, especially the ability to carry a medic pouch for self-healing. The vast reduction and removal of spotting in general also greatly improved infantry gameplay for me, as it's one of my most disliked features in the series. Being a Battlefield game, vehicles also play a huge role in the ebb and flow of gameplay. As someone who prefers infantry combat, I actually really enjoy many of the changes made to vehicles in Battlefield 5. Tanks are beautifully designed with realistic turret, turning speed, limited ammo, changes to repair systems. Operating a tank in Battlefield 5 feels impactful, weighty, and immersive. Especially when compared to 2042, vehicle spam doesn't really seem to be an issue in 5 for me, and while they can cause lots of havoc, they can also be taken down relatively easily by strapping a mine onto a stick and poking it a few times. Lots of weapon emplacements, which in some cases can even be hitched up and moved, contribute to keeping vehicle domination under control as well. Immersion breaking elements aside, Battlefield 5 remains a looker and can actually be quite beautiful. The aesthetic and visual design isn't nearly as strong as Battlefield 1 for me, or even Battlefield 4, but it still looks really good at times and has some impressive visual effects and small details that further immerse players into the game, especially on the incredible Pacific maps. I also can't review Battlefield 5 without touching on the sound design. The sound design of 5, I believe, is one of its most underrated and impressive features. Ambient sounds, weapon and vehicle sounds, and general sound effects are dynamic, rich, and powerful. Just trust me, pop on a nice pair of headphones, jump into a round of Breakthrough, and enjoy the audioscape the DICE engineers have crafted here. It's actually astounding to me that this is the same team that supposedly did the sound design for 2042, as it's just extremely lacking when compared to 5 here. While the soundtrack doesn't hit the highs of Battlefield 1 for me, it's still really solid, and I enjoy many of the tracks and map music to this day. Much like Battlefield 4, if you're thinking of picking up 5 just for the campaign, don't. The campaign missions, while visually beautiful, are just uninspired and boring in my opinion. The war stories feature very little in the way of actual war and large-scale battles, but instead focus on the untold stories of World War II with smaller, in-scale, espionage-like missions. It's not completely awful, but when compared to some of the incredible World War II shooter campaigns of the past, it's really underwhelming. I did enjoy The Last Tiger, however, as it provided a fresh perspective on the conflict and had the most going for it writing-wise in my opinion. While I generally feel positive about the experiences that can be had in Battlefield 5, I have to mention one huge and glaring problem that can really sour the gameplay experience, this being hackers. For consoles, this may not be an issue, but Battlefield 5 features more blatant hackers than almost any other entry in the series in my experience on PC. It's extremely disappointing how little has been done to combat this, and it can absolutely ruin the game quickly. Finding a server with dedicated admins can help alleviate this issue, but I just feel like I have to mention it here, as well as the lack of team balancing, which is another big problem that can really hinder the enjoyment of the gameplay. Overall, Battlefield 5 can be an extremely good time, and while lacking in some areas, at least features the core gameplay elements and loops that draws me into the Battlefield franchise, which is more than I can say for 2042. It's still very much alive and well, although it does have some very dead modes. But the healthy player base, in addition to fantastic quality of life features, fun squad play, solid game mechanics, the Pacific content especially, and deep sales and discounts make Battlefield 5, in my opinion, a very worthwhile use of your gaming time in 2022. Just ignore the stupid Captain Crunch skin and bite the bullet on 5 if you haven't, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and for those that have played or are currently playing 5, let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below. That's it for me, until next time.